Welcome to the Retail Initiative Podcast. I am stoked that you're here because this is going to be part one in a 4-part series called Your Next Million. It's the guide, like how do brick and mortar retailers grow online? Because let's be real, what it looks like for brick and mortar retailers to gain traction is just different than the online only playbook. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. So if you're online only, you'll probably get some takeaways. But for brick and mortar, your strategy just looks different. And so over the next 4 episodes, what I'm going to do is walk you through these steps. So today I want to talk a lot about the foundational things. Like if you've ever looked at a super successful retailer and you're like, I wish I just had a business like them. And you're like, what are they doing? This is a lot of what they're doing. And so that's what we're going to get into today. Next week, we're going to take this a layer deeper and talk about how do you as a brick and mortar retailer take all the amazing things and the things that have driven the success of your storefront and has created a successful business there. How do you translate this into online sales? Then in part number 3, I'm going to get into like, how do we open the floodgates and drive a ton of qualified, like great leads or essentially traffic? How do we get good traffic that actually wants to buy from you to your site? Not just through any one tactic, but like, what does it look like across the board to get these people on your site? And then in part 4, I'm going to get into a concept that I call removing the silos. I think a lot of times retailers, it's like online is in one silo and in-store is in another. And then we have social media and like, what do I post today? And then we have our emails and our ads. And there's not like a thread that pulls them all together. And so I want to walk you through how successful retailers do that. Okay, so I get on calls all the time with retailers. I reference that. And what's fascinating is when I talk about like, businesses that people admire, one of the cool things, like we've had the privilege to work with a lot of those brands, which also means I've gotten to see behind the scenes. And there is this myth, this idea that these brands have just like blown up online. And one of the things that I have to remind people of, like one of our clients, her name is Becca, and she owns a very successful boutique in Fort Worth, Texas. She's been on the podcast before, amazing story. And she was one of those people that people thought just like blew up overnight. It was like, where did she come from? But what they don't see is that there was like 10 years of activity, 10 years of learning, 10 years of testing that got her to that point. And so, but the thing that did shift is she went through a transformation. The way that she was approaching her online sales fundamentally shifted. And so a lot of times when people come to me, they're looking for like, hey, what app do I use? Or what do I do on my site? And I'm going to get to some of those things in the next episode. But a lot of times what I have seen is when we look at growing online sales, there's actually some things that have to happen off of the site. Some ways that we're thinking about it. Have you ever approached something, a new thing you're going to get into, and you realize later, I was thinking about it all wrong. And because I was thinking about it wrong, like I didn't have the right strategy or the right tactics because I wasn't thinking in the right way. And so what I want to do in this episode is if you're a brick and mortar retailer, you have traction there, and you're like, okay, I want to create success in my online storefront. This is the best place to start. Right here with how we think about online. Because if that doesn't shift, it's pretty challenging. So let's talk through these 3 essential shifts that I want to help walk you through. The first shift is that we fundamentally have to have a shift in identity. What I mean here is who you are as the business owner. A lot of times we see ourselves as the owner of a store. We own this really cool store, which makes sense because that's what you open. You literally open a store. There's physical keys to it. That's where you help people. That's where you show up and you can serve. But then one day you're like, oh, there's this like COVID thing. We need a website. And we became a store that had a website. But at the end of the day, it was really about the store. And it was a lower priority. Like, yes, people could shop. But I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but what that really is like in store, you have this amazing experience in the way you know that you do more than just sell products. But then we go online and we just end up selling products. It's like a catalog. It doesn't have that experience. It doesn't have those pieces. And it's because we were thinking about it through the lens of a store. So instead of being a store with a site, we have to shift how we see it. And it's not just how we see what we become. It's you. And so here's what I want to invite you to today. I want to invite you to give yourself a promotion where you're not going to be the CEO of a store anymore. You don't own a store. Instead, what I want to invite you to is, look, what if you became a brand? And I don't mean a brand like what label is on the product. I mean a brand that people are loyal to. And there's a relationship that exists between a brand and its customer, and how you show up every single day and serve them, how you help them, what problems you're solving for them. And you get to be the CEO of a brand. And what that brand is going to have is an incredible in-store experience. And you're the CEO of that. And it's going to have an incredible online experience. And you're the CEO of that. And if you think about it, like, it may have a live sales experience, or it may have a social media experience. These different ways that people are engaging the brand, you are the CEO of. And when we see it this way, what this becomes is, we no longer are saying, like, okay, we have this goal. Cool. What are we going to do in store? And then, oh, we should probably do some things online. Instead, what we're going to do is start to approach our goals and say, okay, how is that going to play out online? And then how is that going to play out in store? We're going to ask those as like one question, one vision playing out in two different places. When this doesn't happen, what I see a lot is we'll end up, in store, we're selling things for full price. People are magnetically attracted to what we're doing, our curation, our service, our styling, whatever that might be. And then online, we can only sell via discounts. Online, like, we only sell via discounts. That's the only way we can get shoppers. And there's just a night and day different brand experience. And that comes from not having like a cohesive brand vision. And so step number one is we have to fundamentally see our role is different. We no longer own a store, we own a brand. And a brand is obsessed with its customer and how it shows up and how it serves. That's transformation number one. Transformation number two is a shift in priority, where e-commerce fits into the big picture of things. And so here, what I want to do is, instead of me telling you what it should be, because I can't decide that for you, I want to tell you what the normal answers, the normal visions that I see, because it's not like the idea of I just want more online sales is kind of like saying I want to lose weight. Like, I just want to lose more weight. We need a better goal than that. Why do we want to lose that weight? What are we really trying to accomplish here? And then we can start to move towards it in an actionable way. And so what I want to do is help us get away from, like, if we were going to go on a hike, we could look at the trail and be like, what am I going to do with the 40-second turn? But that's not what we want to think about. We want to think about, what steps do I need to take? But for us to do that, we have to define, where do we want to be? We're standing right now where you are. You are like, we're in Colorado at a trailhead, and there are 4 mountains that we can climb. And you get to decide, which one of these mountains do I want to go up? And from there, it's like, okay, now we can reverse engineer and say, what decisions do I need to make today to start moving up the mountain that fits my vision, my goals for my business? Because I can't tell you what those are. Only you can decide that. So here's the big 4 that I see. Number one is, honestly, some people do want to be an online powerhouse. They want to be the next huge online player in their industry. Like, if it's clothing, this might be the next Red Dress, Vici, Nanomax, Ruthie Grace, whatever those brands are that you're like, they are just crushing it. And that's what I want to be. And here, like, that's a massive goal, and that's going to take some massive action in order to get there. So online powerhouse, I don't think that's most people. And if we want to do that, a lot of times the store ends up becoming like a creative outlet at that point. It still is important, but the priority shifts to the online presence. That's not most people. Now, then there's the second one, and this is what I call the customer-centric brand. And this is where we're going to start to say, hey, I don't want to just be a store with a website. I want to be a brand that can serve people everywhere. And that means I'm going to equally prioritize, like, what's our in-store experience? What's our online experience? How are we serving them? What is that? What are those pieces looking like? And when we do that, we can reverse engineer and say, okay, what do I need to do today to start moving in that direction? And that's a goal that I love, because when our store and our site get to be an equal priority, like, not only do we get to serve people better, but that's where the revenue starts to follow. The next goal is what I call a store with a site. At the end of the day, the store is always going to be the first goal, the first thing that we think about, but it would be great to get some more online sales. The positive here is that you get to check that off the list and be like, well, if the store is the goal, maybe I don't need to keep chasing all the activity and the things that are going to drive online sales. The downside of this is a lot of times we're doing the things that are going to produce the level of results, but purely by our goals, by the fact that we're not really prioritizing it the same way, the results don't follow in the same way. And then the last one, and if you're listening to this isn't you, but let's be real. Some people just want a lookbook. They want people that are local to be able to see what they have and then come in store and buy it. If you're listening to this, I'm just going to assume that's not you. So here, when we talk about a shift in priority, instead of just saying, what can I do today? What do I need to do right now? What I want to do is say, where do I want my business to be? And do I need to reverse engineer and start to say, like, does the activity that I'm doing today move me closer or further away from that? Because when we don't define our goals clearly, I've been working with brick and mortar retailers long enough to know something will always come up in store. Always. And you know what? If we're going to be a store with a site, that's okay. But if we want to be a brand, we have to start prioritizing things in a different way. And hopefully these next few episodes are going to give you some pathways of things that you can start to prioritize in order to move closer to that. So we start with the shift in identity, seeing ourselves as the owner of a brand. Then we're going to reprioritize and start to say, okay, where do I want to be? And how do I need to start thinking and acting differently to move closer to that? And the last one is a fundamental shift in experience. If you ever visited a store and you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, like these are my people. I belong here and I trust everything about their curation. They are experts in what they do. And like you could spend $1 gajillion if you were willing to. But then we go to that exact same store online and it's just underwhelming. It doesn't they're not experts like they are in store. They don't guide me like they are in store. And so here we want to start to think through, what do we really do for our customers beyond just selling products? Like what problems are we solving? How are we helping them face to face? And how can we start to bring those things online? And in next week's episode, that's what I'm going to dive into, is how we take the best of what we're doing in store, the in-store experience, and bring that into the online experience. So I hope this episode gave you some things to think through, to start thinking about. I would love to know if you have any takeaways from this. Shoot me a DM at RetailJosh. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. That is one of the most helpful things you can do for us, is just sharing your experience listening to this podcast. Otherwise, I cannot wait to see you in our next episode. So thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Initiative podcast. If you want more free resources, trainings, downloads, you can get those at madebycapital.com/podcast. Again, that's madebycapital.com/podcast. And for those of you that are serious and really want to take the success that you've built in your brick and mortar storefront and you want to create that same level of success online, I invite you to schedule a free call with me at madebycapital.com/schedule, where we'll dig into your business, like where things are now, where you're wanting to go, getting really clear on your goals, and what are the 2 or 3 things that might be standing in the way of getting there. Now, look, if we're a good fit, I'd love to share what that looks like. And if not, my hope is that you leave with clarity on where to focus for you to reach your goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see you next time.